Like many of you, we're on vacation this week, so here is an encore of one of our more popular episodes. We'll be back with a new episode next week. Listening is often cited as the most important skill in relationship building. But even though most people think they are good listeners, often they are not. In this podcast, we talk about why and what to do about it. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you. Fred, we know listening is a critical skill, but we also know many people are not good at it. What advice could you give on how people can both evaluate and improve their listening skills?
Sorry, Rick. What were you saying? We're obviously kidding.
As we said, most people think they're good listeners, but often aren't. For example, just ask yourself about how often can you remember the name of someone you recently met 5 minutes after your conversation with them? Or how often can you remember key points of a conversation 30 minutes later? I think if you're honest, a lot of times the answer is not very well. And that's true for almost all of us.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is you need to start with a listening mindset. And what do we mean by that? Well, think about your own situation. Have you ever been trained in listening? If you answer yes to that question, you're one of the very few people that I've ever spoken with who has. Most people have no training in listening, and they just learn, through the process of growing. So as you think about the mindset before you begin to have conversations with people, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, the right attitude is critical. You've got to recognize the importance of listening in building relationships. You need to be focused on what the other person is saying and not on what your response will be. You need to try to reach out to others and engage in open, honest conversation that over time will build trust. It's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to happen in one meeting. It's going to happen over a period of time. Then you need to pay attention and listen without distraction or judgment, purely for comprehension on the other person's point of view on a topic. Last, you need to be able to make adjustments depending upon where the conversation goes.
Part of having the right mindset is you want to start the conversation positively with a smile, firm handshake if the situation requires it, and maintaining eye contact. Ideally, if you can find one, a quiet place to talk, because distraction is probably the biggest enemy of good listening. So you want to have as few distractions as you can. One thing to keep in mind when you're in a conversation with someone is that your body language is communicating about half of your message to the other person. So you want to, again, not show distraction, not be looking around the room, not looking at your watch, but focusing entirely on what the other person is saying to you, because they will pick up those distractions. The other thing you want to do to show that you are attending to what they're saying, that you're actually listening, is to respond by providing some feedback to what they're saying. Agree to points that they make that you agree with. If there's something they say you don't understand, don't let it go by. Stop and say, wait a minute, do I understand you correctly? And then repeat back what you think they said to you. Or if you don't understand it, can you explain this to me? That shows them that you're engaged, and it also subconsciously engages you and your memory for what's going on. You want to evaluate what they're saying in terms of why are they saying what they're saying to you, and is there a response that should be coming from you? But this is in the context of understanding what they're saying to you. Understand their context. What do they mean by it? Why are they saying it? Make sure you understand those things, and if you don't, then ask. Because it's that back and forth, that engagement that not only conveys your listening actively, but also, again, reinforces your ability to remember what was being said. Again, ask questions and get additional information if you don't understand.
Then as you're getting that information, you may want to go down to yet a deeper level. You may want to ask an additional question. You may want to request additional information in order to continue the dialogue. And the other person is going to look for your reaction. They're not looking for someone who just sits and smiles when they're talking. You're going to need to give your thoughts and have conversation about them. Then in some cases, people will be, in effect, asking for your advice. So you need to give advice if requested. You need to be genuine. You need to be sincere. You need to be humble about it. But don't hold back. If they ask for it, give it to them. On the other hand, they're asking for a direction, then you can articulate an action. I've had situation after situation with people that I've been working with where someone had a meeting with their boss. They thought that they heard what the boss said. Granted, if you pressed them, they would probably say, yes, I listened most of the time, but I was in and out with my listening. They had what they thought was the boss's direction. They started to work on it, and lo and behold, when they came back to talk to the boss about their progress, they were going in a completely different direction. So in that case, clarification is the key. They needed to be clearer with the boss as far as what was happening and what the boss needed from them. Then if you disagree on a point with someone, you need to do it very carefully. You need to let it play out for the other person to explain their point. And then you need to try and understand why you think that you disagree, what they meant by their statements. And actually, many times in disagreeing, it's not really disagreeing. It's a matter of misunderstanding each other.
I agree totally with that, Fred. I can't count the number of times that's happened where the other person seizes on something or has a preconception of what I am going to say or am saying, and starts pushing back on a point of view that I was not espousing at all. And I think what's important there, the immediate reaction, at least for me, is to push back aggressively. No, you don't understand what I'm saying, and to not let the person play out what their misconception is. If you let them go all the way through and then say, no, I think you misunderstood me, you can usually work that out. If you push back too hard immediately, they think you're arguing with what they're saying rather than making the point that they misunderstand you. So being patient, listening to what they're saying, and by listening to what they're saying, you may get a better idea of where their head is at on the issue, and it makes it easier for you to respond to what they're saying, and also show them where they have misunderstood you.
Then as you're coming to a close in the conversation, it depends a little bit. If you are giving the person instruction and want them to do something, you might say to the individual, tell me what you're taking away from this meeting. And then give them a chance to respond. And if there's confusion, then resolve that confusion. On the other hand, if they're asking you for something, then you might say to them, tell me what you hope I heard from this conversation, or tell me what you'd like me to take away from the meeting, so that you can find out what it is. You can make sure that you understand what it is that they're asking for.
Yeah, that's all important. And the other thing, back on if you're giving them an instruction or asking them to do something, it's important that you both ask, do you understand? And tell me what I've asked you to do. And also, do you have any problems with that? Get them actively feeding back to you what you've told them to do to make sure that they indeed did understand it. And that kind of leads to just how do you evaluate your listening ability as you're working on it? Are you getting better? Where are your weak points, etc.? And I think we sort of covered this at the beginning with our questions. That is, after you have a conversation, just ask yourself, do I remember everyone's name that I met? Can I play back the main points of the conversation? And take notes afterwards. If you can write it down, that puts it even more firmly in your mind. It also is a good idea in the right circumstances to check in with a trusted colleague, a mentor, maybe a boss, or the right staff people. You know, how am I doing in the listening? Am I hearing everybody? Am I getting the message that people want to get across to me? So ask people to evaluate you. Obviously, you have to do it in the right circumstances. But getting feedback on your ability to listen and be open, don't be defensive to people saying, you're really not, sometimes you just don't seem to be paying attention, and work on that. I think one of the places that can be very useful, one of the resources, if your company has an HR department, if you have someone leave your department, leave the company, leave your department, and they do an exit interview, go to the HR department person who did the interview and ask for any relevant feedback. You can learn a lot that you wouldn't know otherwise. This has happened to me, and sometimes it's stuff you would rather not have heard, but if you go and ask, they will tell you, and if you don't go and ask, they won't. Or they may not. So that can be a very good source of information about where your shortcomings, listening and other things, that can be a good feedback for any manager.
Rick, on that point that you made about taking notes on actions that happened, if you've assigned someone something, or you've asked them to follow a particular direction, one of the reasons that you need to take notes is that you need, in your follow-up weekly meetings with your staff, you need to be able to say to people each week, you agreed that you were going to work on A, B, C. Could you give us a report on how you're doing? And if you don't jot those things down for yourself, then the chances of you remembering to ask for that in the next summary meeting will be few and far between. In order to summarize what we've talked about today, we talked about establishing a listening mindset, which is basically the right attitude and understanding the importance of listening in relationship building. All of us are going to make mistakes, but the fact that we are attempting to stay locked in for the greatest percentage of time is going to help you to build your listening skills, and it's also going to help you to build relationships which eventually lead to trust. Then Rick was talking about conducting an effective conversation and the steps that we need in order to do that, which is basically to listen, to ask questions, to make sure that you understand, and if you disagree, to bring out the issue so that you can chew on it. And then making sure that in summary, that you make sure that the other person understands what it is that you need. And then as far as evaluation is concerned, to make sure, especially where you've assigned things, that you have notes so that you can follow up with them.
We hope you have found this podcast useful and will come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.